My sister-in-law called my cousin lazy for wanting a C-section, and her husband agreed until the surgery went wrong. I'm not even sure how to start this, but I feel like if I don't get it all out, I'm going to explode. I need an outside perspective because everyone in my life is too close to this, and honestly, I don't know if I did the right thing in the end. It all has to do with my family, specifically my sister-in-law, and I need to know if I'm the monster here. To understand, you have to know what my family is like. I live in Rosario, Argentina, and here family isn't just something you see on holidays. It's an ecosystem. My cousins are my best friends, my aunts are my second mothers, and every Sunday asado feels like a national summit where everyone's life is on the agenda. It's loud, it's loving, but it's also suffocating. There are no secrets. Lately, it feels like our entire social circle has turned into a baby factory. I'm not kidding. In the last 2 years, there have been 7 pregnancies between my cousins and close friends. Every single get-together is a gender reveal, a baby shower, or a baptism. It's a happy time, mostly, but it's also become a competitive sport, and the self-appointed referee, judge, and jury is my sister-in-law, Vanessa. Let me introduce the players. First, there's my cousin, Milena. She's the sweetest person you'll ever meet, genuinely. She's the kind of person who cries during commercials. This is her first baby, and she has been walking on a cloud of pure, unadulterated joy for months. She's also incredibly sensitive, and she takes things to heart in a way that makes me feel fiercely protective of her. Then there's Vanessa, my BIL's wife. Vanessa is a lot. She has 2 kids and has positioned herself as the oracle of motherhood. She dispenses advice no one asked for, and her opinions are delivered like facts from God. She wraps her cruelty in a blanket of, "I'm just being honest," or "I just want what's best for you." She's the type to look at your newborn and say, "Oh, he has your nose, that's a shame," and then smile like she just did you a favor. And you can't have Vanessa without her husband, my brother-in-law, Tommy. He's her echo chamber, her hype man. If Vanessa thinks it, Tommy says it, but louder and with more chest puffing. If she plants a seed of judgment, he waters it with mockery until it's a giant thorny tree in the middle of the living room. They're a team. This all matters because I've been through this gauntlet before. I have a son, and I had him via an emergency C-section. It was scary, and the recovery was brutal. But I have a healthy, beautiful boy. So that's all that matters, right? Not to Vanessa. To her, my C-section was a personal failing. A shortcut. And she's never let me forget it. It's never been direct, just little digs here and there for years. But the message was clear. I didn't do it the right way. I didn't really give birth. I was on edge about this topic long, before Milena even got pregnant. And I think that's why everything that happened next hit me so hard. I was already carrying this old wound, and I was about to watch them inflict a fresh one on someone I love. This isn't a new thing with her. God, I wish it were. Vanessa has been running this unspoken contest of motherhood for as long as I can remember. It's a game where she makes up the rules as she goes, and the only goal is to make everyone else feel like they're losing. I've seen her do it to, a dozen different women in our circle. I remember when our cousin Sophia decided to stop breastfeeding at 6 months. She was struggling, her mental health was taking a nosedive, and she made a choice for herself and her baby. At the next family lunch, Vanessa cornered her by the dessert table and with this syrupy, sweet voice of concern said, "Oh, sweetie, I just worry about the baby's immune system, but I'm sure formula is almost as good these days." Sophia just crumpled. Tommy, of course, was right behind Vanessa, nodding seriously and adding, "Yeah, you gotta power through, it's what's best." Then there was my friend Clara, who was so excited about her birth plan. She'd hired a doula and wanted to try a water birth. She was telling us all about it, her eyes shining, and Vanessa just sat there with a tight, pitying smile. When Clara was done, Vanessa sighed dramatically and said, "It's cute that you have all these plans, but real birth isn't a spa day. You'll see." She made it sound so naive, so foolish. Tommy laughed, a loud booming laugh that made everyone turn and said, "Just let the doctors do their job, Clarita. Don't be one of those women." Clara didn't talk about her birth plan again, but it was always the most venomous when it came to C-sections. For Vanessa, that's the ultimate sin. When I had my son, the doctors were clear. It was an emergency. His heart rate was dropping. There was no other safe option. I was terrified, and the recovery afterward was a special kind of hell. I remember sitting on the couch a week later, barely able to move, wincing every time I tried to shift my weight to hold my baby. Vanessa came over to help, which really meant to inspect and judge. She looked down at me, struggling to get comfortable, and said, "Well, at least you got to skip the hard part. Some of us had to actually work for it." My blood ran cold. I was literally stitched together in constant searing pain, and she had the audacity to say I took the easy way out. Tommy, who was there to drop her off, chimed in from the doorway. "Yeah, Julie, you cheated," and grinned like he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I was exhausted, hormonal, and my entire world had been reduced to a tiny, screaming baby and the burning fire along my abdomen. I just looked down at my son and tried to pretend I didn't hear them. But I did, and I never forgot. In her mind, she had created this hierarchy of motherhood, a moral ladder. At the top were the all-natural, unmedicated, warrior goddess mothers like her. And at the bottom were the rest of us, the cheaters, the quitters, the ones who were too weak or, as she would later put it, too posh to do it the right way. She turned a medical procedure into a character flaw, and I could feel that old, familiar anger bubbling up inside me again, knowing that my sweet cousin Milena was about to be her next target. And so, we all ended up at my in-laws' house for a Sunday, asado, just like we always do. The air was thick with the smell of grilled meat and charcoal, the sound of my nephews yelling and chasing a soccer ball across the lawn. It was one of those perfect Rosario afternoons, warm and golden, the kind that's supposed to feel like home. For a little while, it almost did. Everyone was laughing, passing around salads and chimichurri, and I let myself relax. I was sitting next to Milena, and she was practically vibrating with excitement. Her belly was huge, this perfect, round basketball, and she kept resting her hands on it with a dreamy little smile. The conversation, as always, turned to the baby. Our tia asked Milena if she was nervous, and her whole face lit up. "Honestly, not anymore," she said, her voice full of relief. "We saw the doctor on Friday, and the baby is still completely breech. He's just stubborn." She laughed, a happy, genuine sound. "So we have a date. We scheduled the C-section. I'm just so relieved to know when he'll be here, and that it's the safest way to get him out." She looked around the table, beaming, seeking our shared joy. And most of us gave it to her. Smiles, nods, little words of encouragement. But I could feel a cold spot developing at the table. I didn't even have to look. I could feel Vanessa's eyes on her. I chanced a glance, and there it was. She had put down her fork, and a slow, condescending smirk was spreading across her face. The one that says, "Oh, you poor, foolish little thing." There was a tiny pause in the conversation, just enough for a snake to slither in. Vanessa seized it. She leaned back in her chair, loud enough for the whole table to hear, and said, "Ah, a scheduled C-section. So, a bit too posh to push, are we?" The words hung in the air, thick and ugly. The laughter died. The clinking of forks on plates stopped. It felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water over the entire table, and my own stomach plummeted. I just stared at her, my heart pounding in my ears. Milena's smile didn't just fade, it shattered. It was like watching a light bulb go out. Her face went pale, and she looked down at her lap, her hands clenching into fists on her belly. Before anyone could even process the cruelty of it, the silence was broken by a loud, braying laugh. Tommy. He slapped his hand on the table, making the plates jump. "Ha! That's a good one, Vane," he roared, leaning over to give her an obnoxious high five. "She's right, Milena. Real women embrace the pain. It's a rite of, passage. You don't get the full experience if you just let them slice you open." I watched, frozen, as the color completely drained from my cousin's face. Her eyes welled up with tears, and her lower lip trembled. She tried to say something, opened her mouth, but only a tiny, choked sound came out. She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping horribly against the patio tiles. "Excuse me," she whispered to no one in particular, her voice thick with tears. I need the bathroom." She didn't look at anyone as she practically fled into the house. I saw her shoulders shaking before the door closed behind her. The table was left in a state of stunned, suffocating silence. All I could hear was the buzzing of a fly and the pounding of my own blood in my head. Vanessa just sat there, looking smug, like she'd just won a debate. Tommy was still grinning, oblivious, reaching for another piece of steak. And I just sat there, my hands balled into fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms, trying not to scream. I swear, in that moment, I saw red. My vision literally narrowed until the only things I could see were Vanessa's smug, self-satisfied face and Tommy chewing his steak like nothing had happened. Every muscle in my body was coiled tight, ready to spring. I wanted to stand up and flip the entire table over, send the salads and wine glasses crashing to the ground. I had a whole speech rehearsed in my head in a split second. A blistering takedown of her cruelty, my own C-section, of every single woman she had ever made feel like a failure. The words were right there on the tip of my tongue, hot and sharp. But then I thought of Milena. I pictured her in the bathroom, her face blotchy, trying to muffle her sobs so no one would hear. If I caused a scene, what would happen? It would turn into a screaming match. Sides would be taken. My in-laws would try to play peacemaker. And the focus would shift from Vanessa's disgusting comment to the big family drama Julieta started. Milena would be forced to come out of the bathroom and into the middle of a war zone created in her name. It would be 100 times more humiliating for her. So I swallowed the acid in my throat. I sat there, my heart hammering against my ribs, and forced myself to stay silent. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on all of us. I let the moment pass, not for Vanessa's sake, but for Milena's. The anger didn't go away, though. It just changed. It went from a raging fire to a block of ice in my stomach. The rest of the dinner was a blur of forced, stilted conversation. I don't think I said another word. I just replayed that moment over and over in my head. Too posh to push. The sheer arrogance of it. The way she weaponized something so personal, so medical, and turned it into a judgment on Milena's character. It wasn't just about my cousin anymore. It was about me, too. It was about that comment she'd made years ago while I was literally recovering from major surgery. This was a pattern, a sickness, and I was done letting her get away with it. A few days later, the ice in my stomach shattered. I was scrolling through Instagram late at night, mindlessly trying to shut my brain off before bed. And then I saw it. A post from Vanessa. It was one of those obnoxious graphic-designed memes. On one side, it had a picture of a mountain climber at the summit, sweaty and triumphant, with the caption, "The view is always better after the climb." On the other side was a picture of a person in a helicopter, looking down at the same mountain, with the caption, "Some people prefer to take the elevator." Milena, of course. She's too cowardly for that. But she didn't have to. We all knew Milena was having a boy. We all knew her C-section was just a couple of weeks away. She had taken her private cruelty from the dinner table and put it on a public billboard for our entire extended family and all our mutual friends to see. She was trying to poison the well, to frame Milena's birth story before it had even happened. That was it. That was the point of no return. The protective silence I had maintained at the dinner table was over. This wasn't just a mean comment anymore. It was a public shaming. She was trying to humiliate my cousin on a massive scale. I sat there in the dark, the light from my phone illuminating my face, and I could feel the rage solidifying into something new. It wasn't hot anymore. It was cold, hard, and clear. She wanted to play games. Fine. But I was going to be the one to end them. For good. I knew right then that screaming at her would be a waste of breath. Vanessa thrives on that kind of drama. If I yelled, she'd just burst into tears, run to my mill, and paint me as some unhinged, jealous monster who was attacking a poor, innocent mother for just having an opinion. She would twist it around so fast I'd get whiplash, and suddenly I would be the one apologizing. No. Yelling was her game, and I was done playing. My anger had cooled into something far more dangerous. A plan. If I was going to do this, it had to be cold, factual, and completely undeniable. She deals in opinions and emotions. I was going to deal in proof. The first thing I did was call Malena. I found her on the first ring, and her voice was so small and broken it made my heart ache. She'd seen the post. Her husband had shown it to her, thinking he was warning her, and she'd spent the entire morning crying. "I don't understand why she hates me," she whispered, and I could hear her trying not to sob. "What did I ever do to her?" "You did nothing, Male," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "She's not cruel because of you. She's just cruel. Now listen. I have an idea. A way to make this stop for good. But it's aggressive. And I will not do a single thing unless you give me your blessing." I explained what I was thinking, that I wanted to collect evidence, to build a case against her, and to shut her down publicly so she could never, ever pull this stunt again. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, just the sound of her shaky breathing. Then, very quietly, she said, "Do it, please. I don't care anymore. Just make her stop." That was all the permission I needed. My next step felt like something out of a movie. With Malena's permission, I messaged her obstetrician. I explained the situation briefly, that my cousin was being subjected to severe family bullying and shaming over her medically necessary C-section, and that it was causing her immense distress. I asked if, for her peace of mind, he would be willing to write a simple, non-graphic, one-paragraph letter on his official letterhead, confirming that a scheduled cesarean was the medically recommended course of action due to a persistent breech presentation, for the safety of both mother and child. 2 hours later, a PDF landed in my inbox. It was exactly what I asked for. Dry, professional, and utterly irrefutable. I saved it to my phone. It felt like holding a silver bullet. But that wasn't enough. This couldn't just be about Malena. To really end this, I had to show that this wasn't a one-time disagreement. It was a pathological pattern of behavior. So, I started digging. I spent 2 nights scrolling through years of WhatsApp chats and Facebook comments. I messaged Sophia about the breastfeeding comment. I messaged Clara about the spa day birth plan remark. It was like opening a floodgate. They were so relieved that someone was finally calling it out. They sent me screenshots I'd never even seen, DMs Vanessa had sent them, condescending comments she'd left on other people's posts, all dripping with that same signature blend of feigned concern and smug superiority. I collected everything. I organized it all into a folder on my phone chronologically. It was a digital receipt of her cruelty, an itemized list of every woman she had tried to make feel small. My plan was simple. I would wait. I'd wait for the next big family gathering, probably the baptism for my other cousin's baby. Vanessa would be there, holding court, basking in the attention, and I knew as sure as the sun rises that she would start in on someone. The moment she did, I wasn't going to yell. I was going to quietly walk over to her, pull out my phone, and show her the doctor's letter. And if she tried to deny it or play the victim, I would start swiping through the folder. I would show her the screenshots. I would show everyone her own words, time and time again. I wasn't going to fight her with emotion. I was going to execute her with evidence. I felt a little sick to my stomach planning it, but I also felt a grim sense of righteousness. She had built her throne on the insecurities of other women, and I was about to pull it right out from under her. The day of Malena's C-section arrived. I woke up with a knot of ice in my stomach. My phone felt heavy on my nightstand, a little black box full of ammunition. The doctor's letter was saved to my home screen, and the folder of screenshots was neatly labeled Receipts. I felt this strange, grim certainty, like a soldier polishing their weapon before a battle they knew they had to fight. I was ready. I was just waiting for the right moment to deploy it all and watch Vanessa's reign of terror crumble. The family WhatsApp group was buzzing that morning. My tia sent the first message. "They're on their way to the hospital. Send all your love to Malena." A flood of heart emojis and well wishes followed. I sent mine too, but my heart was pounding with a different kind of energy. I felt like a spectator, watching the opening act of a play, knowing I was going to storm the stage during the finale. An hour later, another update. She's gone into the OR. It shouldn't be long now. The excitement in the group was palpable. People were already guessing the baby's weight and arguing about who he would look like. I just watched the messages roll in, my thumb hovering over my receipts folder, and then nothing. An hour passed. Complete silence. The usual flood of pictures, the wrinkled newborn, the exhausted but glowing mother, never came. The cheerful chatter in the group chat died down, replaced by a tense, unspoken anxiety. After 2 hours, my aunt posted a single message. Still waiting. The doctor hasn't come out yet. The question marks started trickling in. Is that normal? Everything okay? No one had an answer. My stomach started to churn. This wasn't part of the plan. The cold certainty I'd felt that morning was starting to melt into a hot, sticky fear. I kept staring at my phone, willing it to buzz with good news, but it stayed silent and dark. 3 hours. 4. The planned drama of my confrontation, the public takedown I had so carefully orchestrated, started to feel incredibly stupid. What did a mean Instagram post matter if something was actually truly wrong? Just as I was about to call my aunt, my phone lit up with a notification. But it wasn't from the family group. It was a direct message. From Tommy. My heart leaped into my throat. His name just stared at me from the screen. And I knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that this was bad. I opened it. The message wasn't loud or joking. It was just 5 terrifying words. Are you at the hospital? Something's wrong. The world tilted. My carefully constructed plan, my righteous anger, my folder of screenshots, it all evaporated in an instant, replaced by a tidal wave of pure animal terror. We learned what was happening in frantic, broken pieces over the next hour. It wasn't just a simple breach, birth. The doctors had discovered a placenta accreta. I didn't even know what that was, but my mother-in-law, a retired nurse, explained it to us in a shaking voice. It meant the placenta had grown too deep, fusing itself into the wall of Melena's uterus. Trying to remove it could cause a catastrophic hemorrhage. She could bleed out on the table. Suddenly, the C-section wasn't the easy way out. It wasn't the posh option. It was the only thing standing between my cousin and death. It was a life-saving, high-risk, terrifying surgery. And as I threw on my shoes, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tie the laces, I glanced at my phone. I saw the folder I had so proudly named Receipts. I thought about my plan to humiliate Vanessa at a family party, to show everyone her petty, cruel words, and in the blinding light of this new, horrifying reality, it felt so small, so pathetic. My war felt like a children's game of make-believe in the face of a real, actual battle for survival, happening in an operating room just a few miles away. The folder of evidence didn't feel like a weapon anymore. It felt like a monument to my own pettiness. The hospital waiting room was its own special kind of hell. It smelled like bleach and fear. The chairs were a specific type of plastic designed for maximum discomfort, and the only sounds were the low hum of a vending machine and the squeak of nurses' shoes down the hall. We were all there, my aunts, my mother-in-law, a few cousins, just sitting in a miserable, silent cluster. Tommy was pacing, his face ashen, running his hands through his hair over and over. And then there was Vanessa. While the rest of us were paralyzed with dread, she was trying to manage the situation. She was flitting between family members, patting their arms with a placating hand, speaking in a low, condescendingly calm voice. Now, let's not get hysterical, I heard her tell my tia, who was openly weeping. These procedures have risks, but the doctors know what they're doing. Panicking doesn't help anyone. She was treating a potential tragedy like she was supervising a toddler's tantrum. She was trying to be the calm, rational expert in a room full of raw, terrified emotion. And I just snapped. All the pettiness I'd felt earlier vanished, but the anger was still there, transformed into something cold and sharp. This wasn't about a meme anymore. This was about a woman who, even while her family was falling apart with fear for someone's life, still had to be the smartest person in the room, who still saw this as a performance. I stood up. My phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. I walked over to where she was standing with Tommy, who had stopped his pacing to listen to her hollow reassurances. They both looked up as I approached. I didn't say a word. I just unlocked my phone, opened the PDF of the doctor's letter, and held it out for her to see. The black and white letterhead, the clinical typed words. Vanessa squinted at it, confused. What is this? My voice came out quiet. Dead quiet. I've never heard myself sound like that before. This is the letter from Malena's doctor, the one explaining why her C-section was medically necessary from the beginning. This is the procedure you called an elevator ride. This is what you called lazy. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Tommy read the words over her shoulder, and a choked sob escaped his throat. He stumbled back and sank into one of the plastic chairs, burying his face in his hands. "Oh my God," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I thought it was a choice. I didn't know." He just kept repeating it. "I didn't know," his whole body shaking with sobs. Vanessa just stood there, frozen. The color drained from her face, leaving it a waxy, sickly white. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her eyes, wide with horror, were glued to my phone. She finally looked up at me, and for the first time since I've known her, the smugness was gone. The judgment was gone. All I saw was a horrifying, dawning comprehension. She looked utterly broken. She didn't cry. She didn't make excuses. She just stood there in a silence so profound it was louder than Tommy's weeping, the quietest I've ever heard her. Hours later, the doctor finally came out. Malena had made it. The baby was fine. It had been a close call, a terrifying ordeal. But they were both alive and safe. The relief that washed over that room was a physical force, leaving us all weak and trembling. In the aftermath, things changed. Vanessa took down the Instagram post that night. A few days later, when Malena was able to have visitors, Vanessa went to the hospital alone. I don't know what she said, but Malena told me later that it was the most sincere, tearful apology she had ever received in her life. Tommy, for his part, organized a blood drive in Malena's honor at his office. The jokes have completely stopped. There's a new, somber respect in our family now. So, here's my question for you, Reddit. I know how it all ended, and maybe it was for the best. But my original plan was to humiliate her, to take her down in front of the whole family at a party, to make her feel as small as she'd made everyone else. The medical emergency just changed the venue from a backyard asado to a hospital waiting room. I used a moment of pure terror and crisis to deliver my final blow. I saw my CL and BIL at their absolute most vulnerable, terrified they were about to lose a family member, and I chose that exact moment to twist the knife and show them how wrong they were. It worked, but it feels so unbelievably cruel in hindsight. So, Reddit, Aita, for waiting for the worst possible moment to prove my point.